Welcome to the Father's Heart Freedom Family. This is your host, Tish, on exploring the divine mysteries of God. Enjoy the video.
Hello, family. You are welcome once again to exploring the divine mysteries of God. I am your host, Tish Akina Asumang, and today I am with a beautiful son and daughter of God, Del Hungerford. Del, you are very welcome.
Thank you for having me here.
I am really honored to have you, Del. So grateful that you responded so quickly to the invite. I must tell you, I love your music. I wish I could be playing one in the background, but your music was introduced to me by Mike Parson, who I'm sure you know,
Oh,
and
yes.
we actually met in one of the conferences, and
In
he
England, right?
introduced yes. And he introduced you and introduced your music. At that time, I had no idea that today you'll be sitting with me and we'll be having an interview and a good conversation about our Papa. But here we are. I love what you do with frequencies and everything you are doing with the healing and everything. And I know there's an amazing, amazing journey you are on and you would want to share with us today. So you are welcome. And first of all, would you tell us who you are and how you came to be the queen of frequencies?
Well, I'll just give you, I'll start out with the who I am part.
Okay.
I am a musician by trade. I was a band geek all the way through high school, college. I majored in music at the University of Idaho in Moscow, Idaho. Then I went on to Yale, got a master's degree. They have a conservatory for graduate students there. And after that, then I kind of did some interesting things in life and then didn't finish my doctoral degree until 2004, I think is when it was. So I took a 16-year hiatus between all the degrees. So I have a lot of knowledge about music. My degrees were in performance, which meant that, and my instrument is the clarinet, which means there isn't anything written for the clarinet that I can't play.
Wow.
But I was also a music educator and taught in the public schools, have taught music education in college. My focus was to be a professor, what we call in the United States, a tenure track professor. And even though I've had a position for the last 29 years, I was an adjunct, not tenure track. And the way they pay and the way they look at the positions, at least in the United States, are very different. That my dream was to get a position at the University of Idaho, where I ended up getting my bachelor's degree. I wanted to go back and take over the job as the clarinet professor. I came that close to getting the job.
Wow.
And it didn't happen. So I was like, Father, what are you doing? I mean, isn't that what you get a doctoral degree for? So you can go be a professor somewhere and do all this performing and, write all these articles and, do all these recitals and concerts and play with the faculty woodwind quintet. And he was quiet.
I like it like that.
Well, see, in a way, I had started this, what I call the kingdom journey, was 3 years before that happened. I kind of had a life crisis in the fact, and this was 2010, and a lot of it came out of living in an abusive marriage, which I think I'd mentioned to you before the show had started.
Wow.
And I had some kind of a sickness that was very similar to chronic fatigue. And it was just really coming to a head. And I had been trying to work on healing, but things just hadn't worked. I literally went from the abusive marriage to an abusive job situation. And when you go from one abusive thing to the next, the healing process is never as quick because you're still in that fight or flight protection mode. So you have to completely remove yourself from it. And I shared this earlier, but the book that I wrote about that marriage was called "But Words Will Never Hurt Me."
Never hurt me.
A story of overcoming abuse I wrote the original
Revising.
one in 2009, but then I added another chapter in 2016. I don't remember, 2015, after I'd
Okay.
walked through most of the healing.
Oh my goodness, that's so good.
But then there's
That's
a
so
work. Where's the workbook? Here's the workbook that goes with it. Yeah, this is
Uh-huh.
the workbook. And I found, because I'm a teacher, you can read and all this kind of crazy stuff, but if you don't take the information that you have and do something with it, then the
Exactly.
chances of you being able to process it are less. So
Ah,
whenever I write books or I create music or whatever I do, there has to be a learning component to it, because we don't mature until we learn from what's been going on in our life.
wow.
And everything in our life has a lesson. And I understood that even as a child. Even
Right.
going through some of the dumb stuff that I did as a kid, I understood, God, what are you showing me in this situation? That scripture that says, in everything give thanks, is not for everything give thanks. It's in the middle of
In
whatever circumstance you are in, give thanks. That's
awesome.
operating out of a higher frequency.
Mm.
Because if you're operating out of fear, then everything can come at you and can affect you. But if you're
Yes.
operating out of the characteristics of God in the middle of the crisis,
You give
then
thanks.
you give thanks. And I had, several opportunities, because, we keep getting more and more opportunities. And if there's time, I can share the very last one. But in reality, I started my kingdom journey. I call it Kingdom Journey in 2010 because of the crisis of this illness. And I ran across a book that was called If This Were a Dream, What Would It Mean? By Murray Dueck. And that's Dueck. And
Okay.
that helped. The whole purpose of it was training your spiritual senses to see, hear, sense, and feel what it is that God is saying. And we don't realize that he speaks to us in dreams. He speaks to us in visions. He speaks to us in things around us. And I'd always said, well, I know God is speaking. I just don't know how.
That's it.
And I had a narrow expectation of what I thought that should look like. And because I had put God in a box, I wasn't seeing the way or hearing or feeling
Yeah,
the way.
the way.
Okay. So I started that. And then in 2014, I went to an Ian Clayton conference in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. And I listened. I didn't understand what he was saying, but my spirit said, what he is saying is right. And I'd always known that the New Age movement was only a counterfeit of what God really had. I just didn't understand how it worked. And I knew that what Ian was sharing was the answer to that question I had asked for years. So what I did is I came home from that conference. I probably went to the website and spent $400 on teachings. And well, see,
I really like that, because I've been telling people you need to invest yourself in this work. And people are like, oh, you need to invest into your life.
if you're
Thank you
not,
so much. Yeah.
if you want something to change, you got to do something.
Got to
You
do
can't just sit
something.
on your keister and say, okay, God, do a work in me. I'm like, okay, there is some action on your part that must take place. And, and I learned that being a musician. You don't get to be a good musician unless you spend time in a practice room. I mean, I joke, I was married to a practice room, went all the way through college. I mean, I had that clarinet in my mouth 10 hours a day, minimum. Wow. Between rehearsals and practice, doing the same thing over and over. So I literally took the same thinking process and applied it to this. And at the time, oh, here comes one of the cats. I have 3, and you just might meet one of them. Anyway, Tilly, are you coming over here? She's going to come over here. So you're going to meet Tilly.
Tilly.
There's Miss Tilly. She's the squeaker of the group. Anyway,
hello. She's opening your curtain now.
Every interview I have, there's at least one cat.
And well, she's taking her position.
She's taking that position today. She's the small one. Anyway, I don't even Tilly, you made me lose my train of thought.
Oh, sorry. We're talking about practicing. Practice,
Okay.
practice, practice.
So at the time I went to that Ian Clayton conference, I was teaching at Washington State University in Pullman, Washington. And I was doing music education courses and some general, what they call UCORE requirements. And my first class was at 9 a.m. and my next class wasn't until 3. I had all that time between those two classes.
Wow.
So I would download all these teachings onto my computer and I would listen to them for those hours between those classes. And then I created exercises out of everything. You know, he walks you through the temple. So I turned my bedroom into a temple where I would do the Yod He Vav He. And then I put a little iridescent piece of fabric over my closet and I'd walk into the closet like it was the Holy of Holies. And then I would, you know, sing the names of God like Ian talked about. I mean, every teaching he had, I turned in to an activation that I could feel, sense, hear what it was like to be in the throne room, what it was like to be in the temple, to exercise all of my spiritual senses, seeing, hearing, feeling, tasting, touching, whatever. The interesting thing about that was a year before all that happened is when I did not get my dream job of being a clarinet professor. Now, I had been teaching as an adjunct professor in clarinet and music education at another school in Spokane, Washington, of which I just retired from this last spring, so I can 100% focus on all of what I'm doing now. Hard to believe I'm retirement age, but
I know, right? I was wondering, are you retiring early because you want to do the kingdom work?
Well, what happened is because of all the weirdness going on the last 2 years, it's brought down the amount of students coming into the school. And in music, especially, they didn't have band and orchestra and choir for 2 years. So there was a period of time where the numbers are way smaller coming into the university. And I was only getting paid per student. And in the United States, you can retire when you're 62. And obviously I'm 62 now. And that allowed me to make it.
You are 62?
Yes.
Oh my word. You are a beauty. Thank God.
But it was just one of those things. You should consider retiring. I'm like, huh?
Oh my word.
But what it does is it's allowing me to continue on in what I'm doing. And it's constantly changing. But when I very first started working on my gateways and working on all of the things that Ian was talking about. Now, see, I didn't know Mike Parsons at the time. I didn't know anybody but Ian Clayton. I'm living in my own little world, didn't know anybody. I mean, the people that I'm around are faculty in universities and they don't think like I do. They look at me and think, what turnip truck did you fall off of yesterday? You know, because I'm not. Too many years of teaching elementary music might have done some of that to me.
Oh.
But some of it's my personality. Within 5 months of doing all of this cleansing and all this working through things, this music started coming out of me that I didn't know was there. Now, remember, I'm trained as a classical musician. So, but at the same point, what's coming out of what, you know, all the music, the albums that you can purchase are all, most of those are done within the first, between 2015 and 2017.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's one that was done in 2018 and another, I think there was one, the last one was done in 2020, but most of those initial albums, I would literally just sit at the keyboard and this stuff would just come out. Wow. And then I would go into the studio and it was amazing because they had a recording studio at Washington State. I'd just go up to the 5th floor of the building and he'd let me record whenever I wanted. And in exchange for recording, I worked in the studio and cleaned and set up the microphones and did all of his book work on the computer work and did all that stuff in exchange. So it didn't cost me a dime to use the recording studio. It just cost me my time. And I was already there, so I just did it when I was there. So
Gyra, giving you your needs All
Yeah.
your needs.
And, there's provision in ways that are not necessarily money.
Of
We
course.
we have to get outside of our box of what we think provision is.
Yes.
So all of that leads to someone came up to me one day and said, well, you should figure out, because you keep hearing that the Hebrew letters are living letters. Okay, well, if they're living, they have a frequency. So I spent years researching the musical frequencies of the Hebrew letters, but I didn't figure it out until 2018. And I knew it was right because God said to me, look for the patterns.
He
Everything
said what? He said you should look for the
has
patterns.
patterns.
Wow. That's very interesting.
Well, if you
Because
look at nature, everything is based on patterns. The Hebraic cycle is based on patterns. Everything is based on a pattern of some kind. When you find the pattern, you know you have the answer.
I've been asking this question because Father was downloading frequencies for us. And I had no idea what it meant. And I kept asking, what are these numbers for? I know they are frequencies, but what are they? Wow. Thank you.
We'll have to have a discussion about what those are because I can help you figure them out. Wow. But, so anyway, I did that. And then somebody came to me a couple of years ago and I just purchased a bunch of crystal bowls. And she said, the Lord told me you're supposed to train me in how to give sound baths using crystal bowls. And I went, sure.
Wow.
So I spent 4 months putting together a whole program for that. She came out in January and there's been 3 people that have been in this training and they're kind of like my beta testers, putting it all together. And just 3 or 4 months ago, I created a whole course so that people can learn how to do this. And it's all based on those patterns I talked about. And, because I understand music theory extremely well, because of, if you have a doctorate degree in music, you got to understand music theory. And it's all based on patterns.
All right. Before we go into the patterns, you actually teach this sound bath. One may not understand what it is. What is the sound bath?
A sound bath is where you bathe in frequencies.
Okay.
Now, if you go to most sound baths, they will just get out a bunch of instruments and they will just play over you, whether it's crystal bowls or gongs or the metal bowls, the Tibetan bowls. There's a variety of things. There are people who will do strictly gong baths. Some people who do only drum baths. Some people will use only crystal bowls. There's a lot of people who have a variety of things that they do out there. And all of those, when you pair your intent, because intent plus the sound is like the positive and negative electricity, where it comes together and then it creates the energy to do what it needs to do.
Wow.
So
Your intent, your intention, and the sound. So what's the difference between that and soaking?
Well, soaking, a lot of times people soak and they don't have an intent. They just go to soak. But the moment you add intent, it's like turbo booster power. Oh,
this is exciting.
You see, but that's the part that people don't understand, the importance of intent. You think about all the studies that they've done with medicines, and they have what's called the placebo effect, where they would give some people sugar water and they'd give some people the medicine, and they couldn't figure out, well, why are the people in the sugar water division getting just as healed as the people over here? Well, their intent was they really believe that what they're been given is the actual medicine.
Yes.
So it's showing that the power of intent is very strong. And there's a lot of people out there that are really focusing on the power of intent, and this was one of the very first things that I started seeing. And this is before I started hearing anyone else teach about it, because I was a happy little musician in my happy little corner doing my happy little thing in my own happy little go lucky world. So
you were taken out of your comfort zone and now giving sound bowls to do sound baths.
So crystal bowls they have crystalline structures. They're made with crystals. Well, your body also has crystalline structures in it. So when you play a crystal bowl, it's resonating with those structures in your body.
Del, I would want you to take that again. Crystal bowls and the human body. Why are we now discovering this? We actually experienced crystal bowls in an ascension, and these were huge crystal bowls. Why are we now discovering this, and why is Papa opening up this to the world today?
We weren't ready to hear it before. I mean, why present
We were.
something to you? It's like I have a first grader. That first grader has to learn to understand words before he can read full sentences. Why would God come to you and give you sixth grade material when you're only at a first grade level? It's at a point when we are mature enough that we can understand the greater things. Now, even in all my understanding of music and everything, 10 years ago, I would have went, bad English. I would have gone, these crystal bowls do nothing, but, and this is where I can show you that this is my large A bowl. And there's an A, B, C, and D bowl on this thing. And
wow.
But then if you go around, since we're talking about it,
Can we go around?
Yeah, I've got the tongue drum over there. And then there's a bunch of crystal bowls underneath that.
With the white covering.
Yeah, that's covered so the cats don't do something dumb like knock them on the floor.
Okay.
And then you go around and there's my keyboard. And then look at that awesome gong over there.
Oh my goodness.
And then I have a cymbal. And then there's a thing that's across from all this that has all kinds of percussion instruments. And then there's a big, you probably can't see it, the bass drum. You might see the bass drum hanging in the back.
Right.
That's a Native American bass drum that I made.
I was going to say you need some African drums there.
I do. I have a djembe.
Hey,
over in front of the fireplace. Let me spin around. I'm trying not to make you go dizzy. Come back around.
I'm quite steady
again.
Yay!
So the sound baths that I use, the basis are crystal bowls.
So crystals in the crystals of the bowls and the crystals in humanity. Please give us that.
Well, so there's a guy named Royal Raymond Rife in the 1930s who used frequencies to heal cancer.
Yeah.
When I was experimenting with this, I had a neighbor who has since died. She had a tumor that was a 22-pound tumor in her stomach. And I practiced the sound baths on her. And she would come over. Tilly, what are you doing back there? I just see this little face pop up.
I see that.
She had this honking tumor that was literally right here. And she would come in and I played that low A bowl and and you could see the tumor moving. It didn't like the A bowl.
Oh.
But then she'd come over another time and the C bowl would resonate more so. And we realized that, and this was before I was recording them, because then I realized I need to record them so people can play them over themselves, because whatever it was, the A bowl sound was doing something to the cancer that was killing the cancer. Yeah. Just like what Raymond Rife was doing with his frequency machines.
Yes.
But he had to use two frequencies. It wasn't just one frequency. It was two frequencies together that he used to put on his patients. And this was like in the late 1930s. And of course, I talked to a guy who's been doing the research on that. He's a music professor at Skidmore College, and he understands music. I mean, really, if you understand music theory, you understand harmonics, then a lot of this stuff makes sense. But unfortunately, a lot of the people who are doing the research on this do not understand music theory. They don't understand the musical harmonic series, how it works. When you understand that stuff, then you see the patterns. So what I'm doing with the sound baths is we find out which bowls seem to work for people. And I tell people, it's like you go to the doctor, you get a prescription for an antibiotic. He says, take this for 10 days, 3 times a day. Well, I look at a sound bath the same way. It is a prescription for healing that you will use, but at the same time, I give you things to say and speak over yourself based on the bowls that I chose, the musical intervals that I played, and because I've done a lot of research on all of those properties as well. I mean, the United States government has known for years that musical intervals affect us. And they purpose and rhythms. You go into a grocery store and music is always at the same tempo. They want you to walk through the store at a certain pace so that you can do your shopping.
Yes.
Think about every store that you walk into, the difference of the music that you're hearing. There's a purpose and a reason that they play music at those speeds. The style of music they play, they're creating a mood. Scientists have known for years the power of music.
Yes.
Psychologists constantly talk about it.
Yes.
So I am just looking at the science behind why. But if you don't understand music theory, you're not going to understand the science. It's kind of like when you go and you get a degree in chemistry or a degree in physics or all of these other things. There's a lot of formulas and things that you have to understand before things can be done. The problem with music theory is so much of it is hearing as much as it is understanding in your mind, that there has to be a different level of comprehension with music theory than there is with understanding the elements or all of those things. Because a lot of that, you can do that with book work. With music theory, you can't always do that. There just has to be a hearing component to it as well. So that is how I do the sound baths. And so when this woman came to me and asked for training, I had to go through all of that years of stuff and then put together a program. And I have 2 people who are actually in module 1 of the course right now. And the first 2 modules are online, do at your own leisure, Then you interview for module 3, which you get into the really deep stuff. And at the end of module 3, you come to my house and spend 10 days here and you go through the final training.
Oh, is that where you are doing? Is that why you are building the retreat center?
Yes.
What did you call it?
It's the House of Dalit.
The House of Dalit, the door.
Yeah, because Dalit is doors and
door.
Door. Yeah. And
exciting.
Yeah, I mean, you probably saw some of that on my Facebook page. Because I have a house built out, a building that's out of doors.
Wow. And you are building it yourself. That's what you said to me the last time when you came in with the, the heavy stuff.
Yeah, I have power tools.
Well done, woman, with your power tools. Yeah, that's the one. I'm thinking, what's she doing with power tools? And wow.
Okay, let me just say one thing. I have 7 brothers. Is that all I need to say? And you'll understand that part.
That's all you need to say. I get it. Are you the only girl?
Yes, I am the only girl.
You are blessed, woman. No wonder.
And I am the second oldest. So
you are the boss.
Well, I'm not sure I was the boss, but I just always could put them in their place even with my muscles.
Of course.
Because you have to learn to build your muscles even when you're the only girl. Because like some of my younger brothers came up and would do something dumb. And I'd, that dead leg, you go on the leg and they're like, excuse me, I'm not going to bother my sister right now.
So tell me, Del, what made you shift into the kingdom work? Because something made you go to see Ian Clayton.
I actually went to see David Vancouvering. He was going to be there. And I was researching all the frequency stuff. And it just so happened that Ian Clayton was at the same conference. Now, I wanted to talk to David Vancouvering, and he did talk to me, but he was so much more focused on everything else that was going on that I really never did get to have a good conversation with him. But God's plan was for me to be there for Ian Clayton. And as soon as the conference was over, I realized that. I didn't know who Ian Clayton was.
I think that's how a lot of us chanced on him. We didn't know who he was. But Father kept leading us to him. He's done a great job for this generation, hasn't he?
Yes. And I honor him for all that I've learned.
Yes.
I did all 3 years of the nest. I didn't do year 4, but that was right at the very beginning of COVID, and I wasn't even sure I was going to have a job in the fall. So I
Well
opted
done.
out of year 4. But I've become involved in a few other things. I'm also now part of the Wow Church, which is
Oh,
Kirby
wow, church is amazing. What's
and
his name again?
Kirby Delanero.
Herbie.
He came at everything from an Eastern tradition. I
Yes.
came at everything from a Western tradition. I
Yes.
think in order to understand this, you have to look at several different people. And I'm trying
Mhm.
to understand it from an Eastern perspective. Because, like everything else, a good researcher will look at things from all sides.
Yes.
They will look at things that are polar opposites so that they can figure out where the center ground is, which is
Of
interesting because Kirby
course.
talks a lot about that. Now, they're all saying the same thing, they just have a different way of saying it. And you liken
Exactly.
that to learning styles. In the
Exactly.
classroom, I had kids that were visual learners, some were kinetic learners, they all learned differently. And so when you have all these people who have come together and you see their different ways of presenting things, then you get the bigger picture. I've been learning a lot there because he understands meditation and those things from the New Age perspective, because that's where he came first. Remember what I started this conversation with? The New Age people knew more about stuff than the Christians, because the Christians just rejected it because they were, oh, that's New Age. But I always knew that there was something powerful in it. It was just a twisted version.
That's it. That's it. And
And
the reason why I honor some of these teachers, forerunners like Ian and Mike and all those Kirby and all those people, is because they saw that the other side. They knew, they recognized that it was twisted,
Mhm.
and they were seeking for truth, and they were able to break through for us, for some of us to now step into, and we are now carrying it and passing it on to people. So I would ask you, what is the next step with frequencies? Where do you think Father is taking frequencies to?
Well, I think that there has to be a greater understanding of how it works. One of the things that I see people do is they go and they find all this stuff on the internet, and they find 7 or 8 people say the same thing, but the stuff is inaccurate, especially when it comes to music. Because a lot of the
Right.
people doing the research know nothing about music theory. Case in point, the ancient solfeggio frequencies. You've probably heard of those. You know, the 528 frequency of love.
The ancient words.
The ancient solfeggio
Uh-huh.
frequencies what are 396, 417, 528, 6.
Yeah, yeah.
All those numbers. Well, me being the geeky musician that I am, I'm like, oh, I wonder what frequencies, what pitches those are. So I went and looked them up. 396 hertz is this note. 417 hertz is this note. 528 hertz is this note. And I listened to these teachings by these people. One of them is a dentist who knows zero about music. I'm not going to mention his name. You can probably figure it out. And okay, he's saying, he's in a video pointing to, a bunch of monks. It's a sheet music for the hymn to the St. John to the Baptist up there, and said, these frequencies are in that hymn. And I'm looking at it thinking, no, they're not.
Ah,
Because I understand music theory.
of course.
396 hertz is a G. 417 is a G sharp.
Right.
528 is a C. We're going higher. Then the next
Okay.
one is an E. And then I think it's G and G sharp are the next two ones. That does not make a scale, ever. In music history, has it ever made a scale? Western or Eastern, it doesn't match any pattern. It doesn't line up with anything that fits in any kind of pattern anywhere. So I knew,
Right.
okay, but on the other hand, this is where we get into the intent piece. If your
Yeah.
intent and
Your
this
intent.
frequency, you like
Yeah.
196 hertz, and you really,
Right.
it's like the placebo effect. You pair
Yeah.
those two things together for the intent of doing what you want it to do. it's going to create the energy to do the thing.
Wow.
So,
So your songs, the ones I've seen on YouTube that I listen to,
okay.
let's say the song of there's one, is it the song of heaven? Let's say if you take one of those songs,
Mhm.
and what would be your intent? Your intention being experiencing heaven?
It could be. Now, in on my YouTube channel, I do have in the description, I say in the description, see yourself in here or whatever, I'll give a little description. And but you can change the intent. I mean, for example, water carries the memory of the things it comes into contact with.
Okay.
Water memory was first discovered by, I can't remember, Jean Baptiste, some French dude. And he was
Right.
completely mocked for it. And then John, what's his name? Luc
Is this the
Montagnier, he's the guy who discovered
Chinese?
the HIV virus.
Mm.
He showed that when placing a DNA molecule in contact with purified water, then removing that molecule by high dilution, where no single DNA molecule remained, the memory of that DNA molecule remained in the water.
Mm.
Mark Henry, a quantum physicist, Konstantin Karatov, who's a professor in Russia. Several people have said you can override the memory of anything by changing the intent. So
Mm.
these people with these ancient solfeggio frequencies, the information that they have about where they came from is incorrect. The theory behind it is incorrect. But that doesn't mean that the frequencies still don't work.
Mm.
Because you take your intent, whatever your intent is, you pair it with that frequency and it creates the
Yes.
energy to do the thing that you want it to do. So you are overriding the intent of what was originally created. So you could go onto my YouTube channel, you listen to a piece of music and you just really feel, oh man, I see this going into this part of my body. I'm going to pair my intent with healing or whatever it is towards this place.
Right. Wow.
Does
Because
that make sense?
that makes so much sense. So if you listen to something like My Beloved, which is one of yours on YouTube, and you think
Okay.
about Yeshua as your beloved, and
Yes.
your intention is to meet your beloved with
Yes.
the music. So I'm looking at outside healing. You will get that closeness, that feeling of closeness with Yeshua.
Right. And
That's
the
what
more
you're
you practice,
and when you keep practicing, yeah, you
I
practice
wouldn't
it.
just do it once. When I first
Practice.
started this journey, I literally didn't see a thing for 6 months. But that didn't stop me from practicing
Of
every
course.
day.
Oh wow, I like that.
You know,
Practice,
my,
practice, practice.
well, people give up way too soon. We live in what I call a microwave society. You put it in, you press a button, and it's done in 10 seconds. That ain't how life works.
That's it.
The more you
So
are consistent with something, the more, if
yes,
you want something bad enough, you're going to put in the
you
time
will
to
get
do it.
it. You will find it. So
You
let's talk about
Okay, go
yeah,
ahead.
I still want to look at the crystals and the body, how they function. But then we also have the DNA and frequency. Yeah, the sound, the frequency of sound can also alter our DNA.
Yeah.
Is it because of the crystals or the waters in us?
Well,
Right.
yes, and remember that your body's made of 70% water. And remember I
Yeah.
said your body water carries memory. So you
Yeah.
start changing the memory of the water, that's going to affect everything in you. It's like you take a, a glass of water and you put one drop of food coloring in there, it's going to change the color of the water.
Ooh, I like that. I like
So
that.
really what you're doing is you're changing what's in the water, which will affect your DNA. Now I could go down a whole road of geeky stuff about specific frequencies. There's been a lot of studies done on what the frequencies are of your DNA. And there are two that match that seem to be
Right.
our makeups of everyone's DNA. And those are F sharp and C sharp in the 432 concert pitch, believe it or not. And then that matches the sound of the universe at the beginning, which scientists have been able to just determine what that is. I'm like, I'm beginning to see some patterns here.
Okay. What's that one? What is the sound of the universe at the beginning?
F sharp.
Ah, I have
And,
no clue what that is.
well,
But
F sharp is, it's
I'll have to look for it.
the first of the 3 black keys on the keyboard.
Oh.
And
And
so,
what is the
there's,
sound?
I'd have to, I don't have my phone, or I have to go turn on the
Okay.
key. And I don't have perfect pitch, so I can't just sing the F sharp.
Okay, I hear that.
Yeah, anyway, I have good relative pitch, but I don't have perfect pitch. So I watched this Science of Sound video, I don't know, 7, 8, 9 years ago. And these guys get up there talking, and this cosmetologist who goes, well, we're able to measure the sound frequency waves that are in the cosmos all the way back to the beginning of time. And you can measure those and you can determine what the frequency was. And he goes, well, we raised it about 54 octaves so you could hear it. And he just played it, but he doesn't tell you what it is. Of course, I go grab my tuner, rewind the thing, and it's an F sharp. And I'm like, and then he said the most interesting thing. Out of that sound, instead of the usual harmonics of, you always have the octave and then the fifth and then the third, he goes, the first harmonic was the minor third. And then out of that came the major third. Now, the first time he said that, I'm like, well, that's weird. But then once I figured out what the frequencies of the Hebrew letters were, the name of God is the minor third. The name of Yeshua, Yahweh, the name of Yeshua adds in the major third. And I'm like, so out of the universe came the voice of God, which then entered Yeshua.
Oh, the word.
Now, I think this is the first time I've actually ever explained that. Now, I haven't explained it. I just said it.
The word. Wow. Wow.
So,
I've written. Yeah, please go ahead.
I was just going to say, so you're talking about specific frequencies. I think this is where we're going now. But at this point, there are not enough people who understand that or are at a place where they want to understand it. So
Yeah.
when they are, when they're not, you just sit on the information until it's time for it to be released. And I've known it for quite some time, but it really, it goes back to what I said earlier. We learn there's layers. You're constantly peeling layers off an onion. And as people are ready for this particular layer, great. Until then, there's the information.
And I have come to realize that is actually how Father teaches. He will, for me, when he started this journey with me, he gave me a broad base. So I was going into everything, looking into the Sumerian text, looking into African traditions and history, looking into history, world history, looking into all sorts of things. And then I came to I had to go far and near and ask so many questions before I came to get people like Ian and Mike to actually put them into perspective for me. And then I started downloading it, helping people with it. And then he's moving me into another area where he's taking me deeper into it. So it feels like he peels off, you get enough to give, and then he starts all over again. And I asked about frequency because he gave us a broad understanding. There was a time when I was going around looking into quantum physics and looking into music frequencies, and I had no clue why, no clue at all. But then he dropped these things. We saw the bowls, we saw the frequencies. He told us about quantum physics, but then there's nothing. And every now and then I'm like, are you ever going to teach us a bit more about this? Are you ever going to? But there seemed to be a lot going on in the background, as if he's preparing you for the next level.
Yeah. So in a way, I'm probably, there are forerunners at different levels, and this is probably an area I'm a forerunner. I mean, I don't know any other classical musicians who are into what we're doing. Too bad there aren't. But at the same,
you've started a race for it.
But at the same point, it takes someone, God is going to do something with Ian that is Ian's specialty. Well, then
Yes.
as Ian will take you up to a certain point, then someone else comes along to take you
Of course.
on. I mean, it's like all of these arms on a tree. You've got the tree
Yes.
trunk, that's what the whole tree of life is about. You've got the trunk, which is, aligning up all of our energy centers and aligning us up with the energy of God. And all of these branches can be all of these different pieces of the puzzle that are all part of the same thing. Not everyone is going to have the whole picture.
No.
My picture
It's
has
on
to do with
frequency.
understanding the patterns and things within frequencies.
Wow.
But then there are people who try to explain the things who get it wrong, but their intent is to try to do the best they can to explain it.
Of course.
And, and then hopefully there are people who come along who give a better, more
Understanding.
accurate description of really what that is. Which is, I gave the example of the ancient solfegial frequencies.
Yes.
They are not some secret code that was in the Bible. The original solfegial frequencies were invented by Guido of Arezzo, but he used solfege, do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. Except
Okay.
do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, so, fa, mi, re, ut.
Okay. I have no clue what that is.
Well, that is. Did you ever watch The Sound of Music?
I love the sound of music.
Doe, a deer, a
A
female
female
deer,
deer.
a drop of golden sun, me, a name I
I
call
call
myself,
myself.
fall a long way. See, and they use the hand signals to help you. Guido
Right.
Lorenzo taught the monks how to sight sing using solfege, which they use in music schools.
Oh.
I've had 11 semesters of music theory. They put a piece of music in front of you and say, sing this without ever hearing it before.
Wow.
So, and that's what solfege is for. If you have to go, do, all right, you like do, re, do, mi, do, mi, so, mi, do. This is a do, mi is a major third. Mi, so is a minor third.
Okay.
The whole point is you look at the little black dots and you determine the intervals based on solfege. Now, up until the time of Guido, it took the monks 10 years to learn all of the plain chant. So his idea was we need the monks to learn the music way faster. So he developed this system of solfege. And what they've done with the ancient solfegial frequencies is they're saying, well, these are the frequencies that were used. There's absolutely no way that 396, 417, 528, 619, 396, 693, whatever those, I can't remember the upper numbers. There's no way those are it because they don't fit the pattern.
Wow.
Of which the pattern was first scientifically explained by Pythagoras in, 1500 BC? Something, or 500 BC? Sorry.
Oh, wow.
I mean, that was 1,000 years before Guido. But everybody understood because it was natural. It fit into nature. It lined up with the harmonic series. Remember, it's all about patterns.
You see, this is where
cosmos is based on patterns.
This is where I feel the conversation is all coming to a top because it looks like everything is happening. The different streams, you described the tree, the different streams are all coming together. They seem to be going apart, but there is something that there is a connectivity in everything, the healing session, the training, the equipping, everything is happening at the same time. And I'm just wondering what Papa is doing in this generation as to pour everything down on us at the same time. So we have those who are running with the music, with the healing, with the sound bath, with the and healing is changing. The idea of healing is changing because of all the revelations that we are having now. What would you say? I know we are tight for time. I know you are working with.
No, Today is Saturday. I'm just chillaxing. I call it chillaxing.
Oh,
And
good.
finding ways to decorate and get the retreat center ready, because my first, well, not my first retreat, my second retreat is
Wow.
occurring. Well, no, I have somebody coming for training on the sound bath thing. And then immediately following that is another retreat, of which I will have a full house.
Amazing.
So
Amazing.
I'm decorating.
So you had now, so what would you say to we know the church is still struggling to grasp what we found, to 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 see it as part of what Father is doing. What would you say to somebody? I mean, we play music in church, and that is how far we go with it. But this is actually sound bathing and receiving healing to the core. I interviewed Steve Hamilton recently, and he told me some very interesting stories about how sound bath is actually helping people in so many ways: revelations, creativity, healing, all sorts of things coming up through sound bath. What would you say to the world? To the world that is still arguing within themselves about this move, this work we are on.
Get out of your box. Get out of the religious box and allow the things that you didn't look at before as a God thing, as, oh, well, that's just it. What I had was a thought was not God, might be a twisted version. So what is the God part of that? You know, the whole thing with crystals. Oh, well, that's, you think about it. God created everything in the earth. Yes. Adam named it. So if he created it, there's a use for it. It's just, when the problem with the new age is what they've done is they've made it all about self. But remember that we are seated in Christ. When we take that part out and we're doing it all in self, then we're leaving out half. We've only got half the picture. Do you want half the picture or the full picture? It's exactly the same way when we stick ourselves in a Christian box. We've only got half the picture. The other half is out there somewhere, and we've thrown it out because some religious teaching has told us it's of the devil.
Yes, of course. Wow. Thank you. Go on.
I have to look at this. Number one, people, I know, and we're going to be put into situations where this is going to be tested. We have trials. Yes. I honestly grew up in this whole thing. I knew in 2012 that I was losing my home to a highway project. In the United States, we call that eminent domain. Through that, I was, following Ian's teachings, listening to all this stuff. I partnered with regional angels, dealt with things on the land where I used to live, and then ended up in the courts of heaven dealing with things with an environmental group that was suing the state, all of these things. And I realized, well, this isn't all about me. This is about the land. This is about the people who live where I'm living and where I'm moving to, and how God is doing all of this. You get yourself out of it, and it matures you if you let it. It was, it lasted 7 years, because I didn't move until 2019. And that's when I moved here. Then when I moved here, it's starting to open up, because I've been here 3 years now, obviously. And during that 3 years, I'm starting to see the things that he's doing. I know I'm on this particular land for a particular purpose, but I don't have to know right away what it is. He opens it up, just like he opens up everything layer by layer. Because if everything was given to us at the same time, trust me, if I'd have known how my marriage was going to turn out before I married the guy, there's no way I'd have done it. But he literally almost killed me. But at the same point, I wouldn't go back and change it, because I wouldn't be the person I am today without living through that.
Of course.
We all have a testimony. We all have a story, and trials mature us, which is, where is, oh, crud. I'm not sure I can get it.
Is it a book or another book?
I have like 4 books, 5 books.
Oh my God, woman.
Well, this one is the latest one, Maturing as a Mystic. This is the workbook. This one's called, they have the same cover, but one says workbook.
And one is the main book.
And this kind of walks people through my journey. I mean, and showing, okay, these are how I clean the gateways. This is how you go into your heart garden. And that's the maturing of the mystic. I compare, kindergarten through college as our Christian walk. This one, the workbook, I actually go, go through, this is your heart garden. This is the mobile court. This is on how to take the information, upside down from here and put it into practice.
I like that.
Everything is about practice.
Practice. I like that. I have to purchase one. Is it on Amazon?
Yes. It's called
Practice. On Amazon. Okay.
Practice takes patience and perseverance.
It takes patience and perseverance. And that is where we all have to start from. Practice until we are able to find what we are looking for. Thank you so much, Dale. I have really enjoyed this conversation today.
It was a wild one, wasn't it?
I know. I know. I hope there'll be a lot of people who are interested in frequency who will engage today's conversation, because there's so much to glean from it. Yes. And I believe we will have to do this again, if you don't mind.
That's fine. At some point I can go into some deeper explanations about specific things if you want. And I did a couple of teachings on frequencies for one school as a gift, and I don't mind doing those things. And I just tell people, just trade by buying my music. And if you like what I do, then share, because I don't advertise.
Yeah, I love that, because we have a school now online on Telegram called the School of Sons. Mm-hmm. And a time will come when I would want us to, because now we are doing the gates, we are cleaning the gates and all that, but then we are looking to go higher, to grow higher, our frequencies to go higher. And so I think we should do something very soon. And, it will be fun to have like a mini conference with you. So I'll put it out there. Awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you for coming. Big hug. Love you. Love your spirits.
Is this how you do the hug like this?
Thank you. God bless you so